I'm watching a lot of videos of federal employees complaining because, well, they lost their job, which I know sucks. Nobody wants to lose their job. You're depending on that for your livelihood. But you also got to understand the purpose of a job. A job is there to produce something of value. And I guess a lot of you didn't know. You were just doing busy work that didn't need to be done. And if we don't need you, then we got to let you go in order to save the money. Welcome to the real world. It happens in the private sector every single day.
All right. Other than being slightly condescending in his comment, I think when it comes to dealing, let's talk about specifically the federal layoffs, okay? Now, I understand that for those on the probationary period, there probably isn't a lot that could be done because you were on probation. And typically on a probationary period, you cannot, you don't have that job protection or anything like that. So you cannot, I don't think you're going to have a really strong lawsuit. This is just my opinion and from what I've heard on news reports, okay? But let's take away the people that are on probation and look at the more long-term career federal employees. Now, I'm not a federal employee. I'm a state employee, 19-year teacher here in Florida. But I think part of the problem maybe, okay, is the method in which they are being laid off. In other words, if you are, and I think it's labeled someone as a career federal employee, I don't have the exact terms, so please forgive me. But from my understanding, there might be specific steps that have to be done, that have to be shown in order to lay off a non-probationary federal employee. Now, I know in his comment he may not be talking strictly about federal employees per se, okay? But I know dealing with a lot of federal employees and the mass layoffs that are being done, to some extent it seems kind of like a wrecking ball is kind of coming in and wiping everybody out without really thinking about, you know, what position is it? What are the steps to lay off a person of this rank in this position? Again, I'm no federal employee, but just kind of using common sense, it just simply seems like sending out an email saying you're out and you're not a probationary employee. There might be some problems. Also, really quick update for those who didn't see the news yesterday. Elon Musk sent out a report basically saying that remaining federal employees now need to, I guess, report each week 5 things that they've done on the job. If they fail to report those 5 things that they have accomplished that week, then if I remember correctly, quoting from a CNN article that I saw, it's something, if you don't write in and tell us the 5 things you did that week on your job, that is as good as you turning in your resignation. I remember the word resignation. So again, I don't know enough about federal employment and how it works, but it does seem like we have somewhat of a wrecking ball method. So, I mean, he's got a point in the sense of, yeah, clearly a job is, you know, for something that actually needs to be done. And if what you're doing isn't necessary for the growth of the company profit, whatnot, can we let your position go? I think people know that. But I think part of the hesitation is perhaps the way it's being done.
I was a federal worker who had 1 month left of her probationary period. And today I was told that I will be terminated at some point this week. I'm utterly devastated. I'm confused because my recent performance evaluation was exceptional and I got upwards of $1,500 as a bonus because my performance was so good. And this was my dream job. And it's just being taken away by an administration who doesn't care about science. It doesn't care about people who might be homeless with their dog now. They don't care about our species that we're trying to conserve. That's exactly what my job was doing. It was just to assess habitat conservation for species for a 55-year habitat conservation plan. We should all be so mad right now. We should all be crying like this.
All right, I do take notes, so sometimes you'll see me turning. I'm writing on my notepad. Okay, I'm trying hard not to stop the TikTok videos, at least the shorter ones. Some of the longer ones, folks, you gotta just accept. I gotta stop and do my commentary for it, just simply because it's easier. Okay, performance evaluations. We're hearing a lot of federal employees. And again, a lot of the commentary that's being made about federal employees, including my own commentary, it doesn't necessarily go just for federal employment. It could work just as well oftentimes in the private sector, okay? And in this case, she's talking about her performance evaluation. Many people in both the private and the federal sector positions have talked about they were laid off in spite of a really good performance evaluation. Here is the bottom line. If a company has done its job correctly, they're supposed to hire people that are competent at doing the job. If a company has done its job right. So you getting laid off seems to me, if the company hired good people, you would have a good performance evaluation. And I think at times, perhaps we need to split the two. Instead of relating them to each other and saying, well, I have a really good performance evaluation, therefore I'm surprised they laid me off. I would be more surprised if I heard, comment after comment saying, oh, my performance evaluation really sucked, and they laid me off. I'd be like, well, of course, lay you off, fire. But if a company's done its job well and layoffs are required, then logically, I think the layoffs are going to be from people who are skilled, talented, and very dedicated to their job. I think at times it's hard for us to separate it because we want to associate that the people that would be laid off are the people who are incompetent at doing the job. But if we remember that your layoffs are separate from the dollar performance of the company, the budget, okay, they're separate things. This means when there's a layoff, it's almost always going to be of really skilled, dedicated people to that job. But it's tough because we want to think that the only reason you'd be let go from a job is because you sucked at it. But in reality, if the company hired the right people, then anyone who was laid off would be a good employee, someone they would not want to lose.
Let's discuss how these mass federal terminations and layoffs are going to affect the job market and what that's going to mean for job seekers. So for one, you are going to have an increased number of applicants entering in private and nonprofit sectors from federal service, and it's going to make the job market extremely competitive. Now, if you are entry level or if you are, mid-level or even executive level, this is going to impact everyone because now you have all of these senior executives and highly skilled federal employees with lots of degrees, lots of experience entering the market. I don't think people understand how rigorous federal hiring is, and most federal jobs require some form of degree. Not all of them, but most of them do. So now you have these people who are displaced out of federal service going back into private sector. Organizations and companies are going to start increasing the qualifications for applicants. And recruiters are going to start looking for more than just maybe a certificate or certification in certain career fields that once was skating by. That's not going to be the case anymore. So the next impact that you're going to see is with salary negotiations. And what I mean by that is everybody knows public sector, you make far less than you do in private sector. So I'm a GS-12. I make $90,000 a year, which is good money. But I know for the amount of money that I handle and control with M's and B's, I could be making 150, close to 2. Now, if I go into private sector and I ask for $120,000, that's good money. That's a $30,000 pay increase. Whereas you would have probably been asking for that 150 or 175 salary. The company's winning by picking me because I'm like 150 and save them $25,000. So you see how that is going to impact because federal workers are already making less money. So any type of pay increase is going to benefit them. And then for like consulting and those companies that have contracts with federal government, now that federal employees will be getting out of public service or public sector, they can go and work with these consulting firms because they know the ins and outs. And who do you think they're going to be more willing to hire? Somebody who already has the knowledge or somebody who they have to teach the knowledge?
Now, that last point that she just made about federal workers that perhaps go to work for private contractors, that's a real bonus if you understand, like she just said, the ins and outs of the federal government. I think we're going to have to be really, really careful, you guys, that we don't jump to conclusions about the stereotypical federal employee. Because I know there's a lot of, oh, these federal employees are lazy, they're not worth more than minimum wage. Have you actually gone through the steps of just trying to get an interview for a federal job? It's quite the labyrinth. It really is. I would agree with her that most federal jobs, I do believe, require at least a bachelor's degree. And here's the thing, you guys, for those private sector employees cheering on the federal people losing their job, and let's face it, we have it going on, okay? There are some private sector people cheering them on, or so I should say cheering on the job losses, going, see, now the federal employees know what it's like in the private sector. Be careful what you wish for, because those federal employees are going to need a job somewhere. And I was watching a news report earlier today, and it was talking about some of the states are saying, look, all these federal people that are getting laid off, we can't just absorb them all into state jobs. So it's not like, you can get a little bunch of hoof prints going from federal, and then they're all going to run to the state and get state city jobs. There aren't enough. It's going to become saturated. So where are they all going to go? They're all going to go into private sector. So they wind up becoming more competition for private sector people who have never held federal jobs to have to compete against. And I will go out on a limb. Oh, I think my lights just changed a little bit. It's getting darker outside. I will go out on a limb, and I will even say, I think there are employers that would be very happy, all things being equal, depending upon the complexity of the position. There's kind of a bonus to having someone who understands the federal government structure and how it works. This could be a benefit. So those people sitting out there just getting all happy because the federal people are losing their job, be careful what you wish for, because they could become your immediate competition.
These federal layoffs, these federal jobs, people losing their jobs, this is about to make the job market very competitive. Think about it. We had the Great Migration with all of the black leaving the South to go north. I feel like it's about to be another sort of migration, and that's from the Virginia area. And I hate talking politics, but I think this is politics. But or just the economy in general. All of these people losing their jobs. What about their mortgages? What about the small business owners like daycares losing businesses? Not to mention how the funding for daycares and things like that are all out of whack because of the Musk guy. But anywho, back to the federal employee. These federal employees, they need to find work. In the DC, Virginia area, all of these people's in their job in the same area. Will that area be able to facilitate all of these new people looking for work?
And something to consider, folks, if the area cannot absorb all the federal employees along with the private sector employees looking for jobs, and I think we can safely say most areas can't, what are people going to do? They're going to leave the area. Now what happens when the people leave the area? Less tax dollars, less business. There's a huge domino effect. We cannot forget the huge domino effect from the little mom and pop business that had that little cafe coffee shop right next to the federal building, and 80% of their business came from the federal employees that ate lunch there. Okay, this is going to have a huge domino effect that I think at times we forget. We forget that this trickles down.
Job market is about competitive. These federal workers are smart, educated, some of them have really long job history, and they're out here applying for these jobs. It's going to be hard for the regular people that's already looking for jobs. So the market for jobs is about to be tight. Or all of these people going to go to the same state? Or are they going to the same area? Or all the work from home jobs is about to be occupied? There's so many questions and so many things that everyday people are not thinking about.
There were a lot of layoffs today as part of getting rid of probationary employees. So I just wanted to really quickly give you some strategy for what you want to do. So number one, if you haven't yet been fired, do not take the severance, do not take the buyout, because that means you will forfeit your claim to unemployment and any future litigation.
Now, she has a list of 6, 7, 8 things here, so we're going to stop at the end because I can't remember it all. Okay, here is my piece of advice. I would not accept or deny a severance based on anything you hear on YouTube, including what you hear from me, okay? And I have voiced my thoughts earlier regarding public service loan forgiveness. And the only thing I can tell you is when your federal job ends that month, your public service loan forgiveness count towards your 120 credits, that also stops. And it will not resume again. That count will not pick up and continue where you left off until you get another public service job. So if you have a really high student loan balance, it may behoove you to take serious consideration. Should you just bail right now and take the severance pay and immediately stop your public service loan count? Or should you try to hang on to keep that job so that every month you're in a public service job and you make a student loan payment that same month, that it counts towards your 120? These are things that have to be considered. I also know that it varies from state to state as to the rules of how severance pay works and unemployment. It can vary as much, not just from state to state, but the rules of the severance itself. So I would beseech you not to accept or deny a severance pay because some lady or someone wearing bunny ears, that's the look of du jour, it's bunny ears today, okay? Not kitty, not bear, it's bunny ears, okay? But I would not accept or deny a severance pay because someone on YouTube says, yeah, if you take severance pay, this is what's going to happen. She doesn't know any more what's going to happen to you than I do. All I can do and what she can do is we can give you heads up. But ultimately, you're going to have to look because severance pay is literally individual, company to company, state to state. What are the laws? What's on the contract of your severance pay? We don't know that. And anyone who claims to know that, they're lying to you.
So don't take it even if you're eligible. Number 2, if you still have your job, immediately stop all work. None of it matters anyway. The priorities have changed with the flip of a switch. So whatever projects you were working on, no one's going to use them anymore. So quit.
I do not agree with that advice either. I understand the wanting to agree with that. Excuse me. I mean, I understand that, man, everybody's walking out the door and getting fired. I understand it's laid off, it's not fired, but, tomato, tomato. Okay, it feels like you're fired, and I can certainly respect people who feel that way. I would feel the same way. But to say stop working on, your work and stuff, I don't agree with that. I just don't.
Don't do it. Stay employed, but don't do any work.
Why do something that's going to bring attention to you? Don't do anything that's going to bring attention to you if you don't have to. And one of the surest signs to bring attention to you and say, hey, today is my final day is just stop working. Don't do stuff that brings attention to you. Unnecessary attention.
Number 3, blow your sick leave or vacation if you have it because you're going to lose your job anyway eventually.
I kind of agree with that. If you know that you're not going to get paid out for it, I can't really disagree with that to a certain extent.
Number 4, protect your peace. Number 5, start figuring out what you're going to do next. Use this as an opportunity to restructure your life in ways that reduce your anxiety, prioritize what you love, and give you the time and space to do what truly matters to you.
That's great if you have the income to, sit and reflect on life and do what you love. Most people don't have that type of income luxury, and they need to immediately start doing Uber. So I guess while you're Ubering, you can sit and contemplate on what you love. I'm trying to keep it real, family, just trying to keep it real. Okay? I mean, and if you're a household of one with limited budget, I know I would not have time to sit and go, well, I guess I got laid off today. You know what? I'm going to reflect and I'm going to do what I love. That can take money, and doing what you love may not even be enough to pay the bills. So I think that's advice number 5. I would take that with a grain of salt. We are in urgent times. It calls for urgent measures, and sometimes doing what you love when you're in a crisis just doesn't work. Great for you if it does. You got the time, maybe you got a second income. Maybe this job was just, a little bit of holiday vacation money. Great. But for most of us, I'm willing to bet we don't have time to sit and reflect and do what we love or reflect on that.
Number 6, immediately download all copies of threatening, harassing communications from OPM or any representative or your employer or any confusion onto your personal machines. Take as much data as you can possibly get.
I do agree with the data. Take the data with you. Yes. Pay stubs, especially if you're PSLF. Get copies of every freaking pay stub. Okay, because showing that you are paid in your bank account is not going to be accepted by PSLF. They're going to want to see a copy of the pay stub, especially if your department should be severely downsized where the hiring manager that hired you is no longer there, or worse yet, your entire department disappears. And then you're trying to go for loan forgiveness and they say, show us a copy of your pay stubs, and you never downloaded any of it. Also, don't forget to update your employer verification form. Get those signatures done.
And into your personal control for later use or reference as evidence in a later lawsuit. Number 7, make them fire you or lay you off. Again, do not quit, do not take a severance, make them do it, because this is how you become and stay part of the class action that has a claim against Elon.
She actually makes a really good point there, because I'm not an attorney, so take my info with a grain of salt sometimes. Okay, this might be one of those areas, but I'm willing to bet that if you sign off on a severance, you are signing off on a waiver, so to speak, that you're not going to sue. You accept the severance pay, you understand that you're being let go, and you agree to these terms. And if there should be a suit down the road, you waived your right from that. I'm the type, I would make them push me out. I probably would. I would make them push me out.
Musk and the government. Number 8, or whatever number this is, file immediately for unemployment. They may not pay it out for long because everybody's going to be coming out into the system at the same time, and all of that infrastructure is also being destabilized by the cutting of funding and the dismantling of the government, because a lot of money funnels downward, right? So file unemployment immediately, file it in your home state, and just get that process started, because if they run out of money or if the system gets overtaxed, it very likely will be a first come first serve situation. Number 9, stop paying your bills. You cannot afford to part with the money you have. You should pay for your house, you should pay for your car, the things that you need immediately, but keep as much of your own money in your pocket, because you didn't do anything wrong. So if the credit card companies and your consumer lending, they have to take the heat of this, great. They're going to fight your battle for you eventually when everybody starts defaulting on their credit. Forgive your own debt.
I can tell you, as someone who's had 2 bankruptcies, again, desperate times call for desperate measures. I can't disagree with her that if you are really tight financially, you need to do your priorities. What would Dave Ramsey say? Food, housing, electric. Don't forget your car insurance, okay? You don't need tickets on top of tickets and violations. You don't want that. But if you're up that, really bad credit card creek and you're giving up $500 a month just to make the minimum payment, you may have to accept some late fees and penalties if necessary. This is something that only you as the individual person can judge. This is why I'm saying, you can listen to someone like this lady, or you can listen to me. We can give you tips and advice. But in the end, ultimately, of course, it comes down to your individual household needs, how secure your resources are. But I've been exactly where, the advice she's saying. Sometimes you have to say, look, you know what? I can't afford to pay my credit card bills right now. It is what it is. Yes, you're going to get all the repercussions. Your interest rate's going to probably go up to 30% if it isn't already there. You're going to have late fees on top of late fees. Be glad it's credit card, not student loan. You can go bankrupt on credit card, but as you know, you cannot go bankrupt on student loan. And don't forget, if you take a forbearance, whatever, on student loan, you defer your payments, whatnot, interest keeps running.
Don't worry about your credit score. You can worry about it later. The worst case scenario is that they're going to file a judgment against you. And if you don't have the money and you don't have any wages to garnish anyway, who cares? They don't have anywhere to go to get the money back. So let them take their own debt.
Don't forget also, for those who may be sharing checking accounts with people, if you find yourself in a real tight financial position where wage garnishment is at risk. Do not forget that on federal debt, such as student loans, they don't need to get a court order to garnish your wages. Child support, anything dealing with, federal, state, federal, they don't need to go the usual route. You think before they can garnish you on your student loan debt, they have to take you to court? No, they don't. It's the federal government and it's a federal loan. Now, private loans would have to do that because they are private, so they have to go through the process to get your garnishment. If you find that your back is against a wall and you are looking at wage garnishment on federal debt, i.e. student loans, make sure that you do not share an account with anybody. Checking, savings. Do not share accounts with anyone, including your spouse, live-in, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Because if it should get to the point where there is a garnishment, they're going to take it out of any account with the debtor's name on it. And it's not going to matter whose money it was that was being deposited. So I carry am in student loan debt. I have a husband. We share a joint bank account. Our finances are in the hole. We cannot pay our bills. The student loan gets behind. He and I are both on the same account. Well, guess what? They can garnish any money that my husband deposits. I'm not married, but if I were, okay, they can garnish any money that my husband deposits as well as mine. They don't sit there and they don't go, oh, you know what? This is Carrie's boyfriend or this is Carrie's husband. That money's from his check. We can't garnish that. Nope. It is a come one, come all. So as people are finding themselves unemployed, to protect your family finances. Trust me, I'm doing this to be helpful. I'm not trying to mess up anybody's relationship and say don't share accounts. I'm doing it to protect you. Keep those accounts separate. So if there is another member of the family, perhaps that does not have student loan debt or any other sort of garnishment, okay, whether it be child support, court order against you from a credit card company, whatever. The person who has no threat of garnishment, you don't accidentally mix your accounts together, and then you lose even more money because you didn't know that. So keep those accounts separate to protect your household income from further damage should one of you be under risk, threat, or court order of a garnishment of any sort.
Many people choose to be federal employees and not go in the private sector for a variety of valid reasons, which is why the illegal removal of these employees is serious. Oftentimes, people choose to be a Fed because of the stability.
She is absolutely right about that, by the way. It's the reason a lot of people choose to be federal state employees, even though we, and I lump myself in there, even though we are paid less than what the private sector makes. It's the stability. And let's not also forget, if you can make it a career, there's a pension package at the end as well. So some people will tell you that, well, the private sector makes more money. Okay, you deal with more layoffs, more job instability. You typically don't have a defined benefit pension. Okay, whereas federal, state jobs, we make less money. Okay, sometimes way less. But we have the stability, but you have to really have, I'm going to say about a 25 year, okay, minimum 20, I'm going to say, but closer to the 25, 30 year career working for that federal or state government. So it's really just kind of on what you want and what your job and career interests are. I'm just lucky. I happen to be a teacher and happens to be my dream job. So for me, it worked out. Not so much financially. I mean, teachers don't make a lot, but I really love my job and the stability is there. But I do sacrifice much more financially compared to my private sector counterparts that make significantly more money on the same level of education with a master's degree.
They might take a huge pay cut, but many of the benefits and the stability outweigh the salary. Whereas in the private sector, you might have a much higher salary, far less benefits, and far less job stability. So
I think if I had stayed in the corporate world, and that's where I was for 15 years until I became a teacher at the age of 38, and I'm now 57, I believe I would have been laid off nothing less in the last 19 years that I've been a teacher, nothing less than twice, maybe even 3 or 4 times. If I just look at the way the economy has gone. The very first company that I worked for, a major insurance company here in Tampa, closed its doors and let everybody go, and they left the state. That would have been the first big layoff. And then, of course, then you had the housing market crash, and then you had COVID, yada, yada. So there's something to be said for it, for choosing federal, state over private.
So it's about what you choose. Just like an employee versus an independent contractor. As an independent contractor, you might be in charge of your own insurance and in charge of your own benefits, but you might make a lot more money, whereas an employee, that's more guaranteed for time off and insurance and benefits and things like that. I know it is different in other countries, but this is how it is in America, and particularly with the federal government.
I cannot believe that I'm still waiting to be officially fired from the IRS. I knew that I was going to be fired since like last Friday because Reddit told me. Shout out to Reddit. Monday was a federal holiday. Tuesday I went in there waiting for my letter. Everyone was acting like, I don't know, business as usual. Wednesday management finally was like, oh yeah, you're getting fired. I know. Thursday they fired half the people. Today I'm waiting to get fired. Sit around the office waiting for my email. And then I get told they're going to send me a letter in the mail. In the mail. USPS. That's how I gotta get that's how I gotta find out that I'm getting fired officially.
I think it's safe to say that federal workers should have taken the severance package when they had the chance. But then again, a lot of people still don't know what the details of the severance package are. And if you didn't take the severance package, well, you're going to get laid off anyway. Federal layoffs start with huge number probationary workers and warnings of bigger cuts on the way.
I think if I had been a probationary worker, knowing that probationary employees were going to be axed, I would have a bigger incentive to take the severance package. Because like I said earlier, probationary employees, I don't see them having a real strong legal standing as to why they can't be let go.
So essentially, the Trump administration on Thursday intensified its sweeping efforts to shrink size federal workforce, the nation's largest employee, by ordering agencies to lay off nearly all probationary employees who hadn't yet gained civil service protection. So civil service protection means that they've at least been on the job at least a year or long enough to gain immunity to things to this extent. So if you were a new federal worker and you haven't been there long enough, chances are you're going to get laid off. Now, of course, Doge, Elon Musk, they have a lot to say about it because they're proposing that they eliminate not just probationary workers, but entire full-blown federal agencies. And this is his reason. He stated, I think we do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave a lot of them behind. If we don't remove the roots of the weed, then it's easy for the weed to grow back. So basically, you're referencing federal workers who have a family to feed as invasive species.
When have employers in general ever cared if someone has a family to feed? Federal, state, city, private. I've never really experienced that.
That's really out of touch. But
here's another scary thought. Okay, and I don't want to veer off on PSLF too much here, but let's say they get rid of the entire Department of Education. They just dump it. Guess who's in charge of public service loan forgiveness, folks? Department of Education is. Yeah, it's the Department of Education that runs PSLF. Are the states going to take it over? I doubt it.
as it stands right now, a lot of people did take the severance pay. They weren't given a lot of time to make a decision. They were sent multiple back-to-back emails saying, hey, you have a deadline. Either you take the severance package or you stand a risk of getting laid off anyway without severance. So people who did take the severance package, I don't know if they know any details about when they're going to get their money, how much they're going to be getting. We do know it's over a course of 8 months, and the severance would stop in September of 2025.
You know what's interesting? I was thinking about, there are contracts that they say that if you can prove that a contract was signed under duress, Okay, like think of an elderly person and they get scammed by some shady shyster, okay, and they wind up in court, whatever, and it can be shown that, look, the elderly person was, signing this contract under duress. They didn't have the time to absorb it emotionally, to read it, to ask questions about it. The only legal light that I could see, again, I'm no attorney, I'm just going on what my little brain knows, okay? If I were a probationary employee, and I don't know what the laws are around this, could it be fought in a class action lawsuit? Not that it would get your job back, maybe it'd make you a little extra change, but could it be argued that anybody who signed the agreement to leave contract was signing it under duress? No time to absorb what the contract means, to ask questions, to hold a town hall, to have legal representation. That's and I'm playing devil's advocate here. That would be interesting. If anybody knows in the audience, is there a potential opportunity there if you were going to sue on behalf of people who took the buyout? And let's say the buyout doesn't turn out to be what people thought. I mean, before you signed off on the buyout, did you find out if you could still qualify based on the buyout rules, based on your state laws? Did you find out if that in turn could deny you 1-2 years of unemployment? I mean, it's like, what did you have to give up? And did they give you a chance to do that? To me, this would be like signing a contract under duress.
If you have been let go, always apply for unemployment, no matter what your employer says on your way out, because unless you are fired for egregious behavior or you did not work in the workforce long enough to receive unemployment anyway, you will most likely still receive unemployment. And a lot of employers will tell you that you are not eligible to avoid unemployment tax. Even if you were fired as a government employee, you are still eligible unless you did something truly egregious and it was documented.
Federal employees with civil service protection, you are up next. Now, reports are they fired about 200,000 probationary employees. And here's the horrible part. Many of those probationary employees can't fight back. But if you have full civil service protections, don't think you're automatically safe because it looks like you are up next. According to reports, they're setting up reduction in forces or RIFs right now. That means more layoffs, and if you don't understand the rules, you could be blindsided.
I just got laid off, technically, because I worked for an elected official who didn't run for re-election. My last paid day is December 31st. And I just did my exit interview with HR today and found out that not only do I get all of my PTO paid out, which is like over 250 hours or something like that. Like, it's a lot. I have a lot of PTO because we had like almost unlimited PTO. I also get 8 weeks of severance, and my health insurance and dental and all of that goes for an additional like 2 months. Like, I have it through February, and I can file for unemployment technically. Like, I'm eligible for unemployment benefits on top of that. I did not know any of this until today. Like, I was actually kind of panicking. I mean, like, I have other, like, I'm not completely lost, and I also have like emergency money and side hustles and like whatever, but I was freaking out just a little bit because I don't have anything like solid lined up yet. I even told my chiropractor today, I was like, I need to wait to schedule my next appointment because I like just got laid off. I don't know what's going on with my health insurance, so like I need to look into that. And now I can schedule my chiropractor appointment.
All right, folks, more TikToks coming up next. Let's do it.